It maybe wasn't as straightforward as some of us were expecting. We kind of thought this would be a yes or a no for Julian Assange, but really what it is, it keeps him in a holding pattern. It keeps him at Belmarsh prison for some time. So the judges who were presiding over this case, they looked at the appeal and they said that Julian Assange had a very reasonable prospect of success on 3 of the 9 grounds of the appeal. But rather than moving this case forward to a full appeal, they've gone back to the US and asked them for further assurances on those 3 points. And that includes things like his First Amendment protection. He is, of course, an Australian. So it's the court asking the US if he would be treated with the same rights as a US citizen, also asking and ensuring that the death penalty will be avoided. So really what this does is it puts him in a state of limbo for really another couple of months. So the US has 3 weeks to come back and give these assurances to the court. Once they've done that, both parties will then be able to make further representations to the court. If the court is not satisfied with those assurances given by the US, then it is very possible that Julian Assange will be granted a full appeal to challenge this extradition, and that has already been set as a possible court date for May 20, the next court date where that could be discussed. But it really depends now what the US does and what sort of assurances they come back with. It's interesting that the court has made this decision. This has obviously been a really long-running case. It's been through all the different courts in the UK. As I said earlier, Julian Assange has been in Belmarsh prison for around 5 years, a really long time. And before that, he was in a form of self-imprisonment, really, in the Ecuadorian embassy. So this isn't the all-out victory his team was hoping for, but it also isn't a straight-up extradition. So really, it's a bit of a limbo here, and the next couple of months are really going to be critical to his case.
Yeah, it's hard to sort of work out from this ruling, Isabella, which way the sort of betting might go, whether it's going to be easy for the US to provide the sorts of assurances that the court might want to be absolutely clear that sending Julian Assange back will not be a risk to him. And that's been part of their legal arguments all along, that he faces a prospect even of not only of a death sentence, but even assassination, which was talked about in the Trump era.
That's right. Julian Assange's legal team have repeatedly said to the courts that they are deeply concerned for his welfare if he were to end up in the US, the way he would be treated, and they have always argued that that is a reason why he should not be sent to the US. Now, it's interesting because in a previous case before a different court, when Julian Assange was appealing this extradition, there was a somewhat of a similar situation where the US offered assurances after the hearings, and ultimately that judge believed what the US had to say, and that is how we've ended up here. So it's difficult to tell what way this will go, what the judges are going to think, but it is probably worth noting that a similar process like this has gone through before, and that the US was able to convince a different court judge that they, with their assurances. Of course, we know that Julian Assange's legal team will be advocating for him very much, pushing all of those lines that they've pushed through before, and also really talking about his health, his condition at the moment. They've said time and time again that he's not well mentally and physically. We've heard from Stella Assange, his wife, before, when she said that she doesn't believe that he will survive extradition to the US for many reasons, and partly because of his poor health.
Yeah, it was interesting. Stella Assange seemed very angry when she was speaking outside there just after this ruling, sort of saying that there's an acknowledgement in this ruling that he does face risk, that he has got grounds for appeal, yet not actually following through. You know, what do you think Stella Assange, his legal team, and how are they going to manage Julian over these next couple of months? As you point out, he's not in good shape.
Well, it will be a really difficult job. Spending 5 years in prison is not easy on anyone, and certainly someone who's had also spent many, many years in a form of self-imprisonment in the Ecuadorian embassy. So we know that he has got good support around him with his family, with his legal team, that he still has regular visits from all of those parties that will be doing everything possible to ensure that he's getting appropriate treatment. We know he's got a legal team who fight for him and advocate for him. And we also know that in recent months there's been a lot of backdoor diplomacy going on, talks between Australia and the US. Certainly in the last couple of months, we've also seen the Australian Parliament passing resolutions calling for this to all come to an end, for this saga for Julian Assange, for the charges to be dropped. So there's a lot of work going on as well, not just in the legal system, but lots of advocacy going on between the US, the UK and Australia to try and resolve this long-running case.